Okay, let's go with Olivia and Basom.
Hello, I'm Olivia. I'm in my third year at York, and I am the Senior Events Coordinator for CARRM.
Hey everyone, my name is Bassam. I'm a third year and I am the Junior Events Coordinator, and I'm excited to have everyone here.
I apologize for that. Hi everyone, my name is Ali. I'm the Secretary for CARRM.
My name is Kieran. I'm in my fourth year at KIN, and I'm a co-research chair for CARRM. Nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Salama. I'm also in my third year at York, and I'm the Junior Marketing Director at CARRM.
And hello everyone, my name is Lomesh. I'm in my second year at York, and I'm one of the co-research chairs in CARRM as well.
Is that everyone?
I believe that's everyone, so we can
All right,
on.
we can kickstart the event. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. So yeah, like Inez said, this is like a little crash course. There's obviously a lot more information, but we're just going to try to cover everything on a surface level. And so, just give me a second. Okay, so this is a timeline of events, if just for everyone's reference. And then I want to start off with the land acknowledgement. So York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Tikaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge that current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, this territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Pump Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. And so, okay, so the panelists joining us for today, I'd like if you guys could introduce yourselves, just unmute yourselves. We can start off with Jinghan. Just give a little introduction about what you're currently involved in and what experience you have with research.
Hi everyone. So I'm Jinghan, now a second year master student in Dr. Paluti's lab. So we're doing the neuroendocrinology research on the mosquito model. So yeah, I just investigate one of the novel neuropeptides and what's the function and where it's expressed. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Zeynab, you could go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Zeynab. I'm a first year master's student at Paluti Lab. As Jinghan explained, I'm using CRISPR-Cas9 technology to study a gene in mosquito, and yeah, that's it. I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome, thank you so much. Amireza?
Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Amireza. I go by Amir or Reza. You could choose which you'd prefer. It's great to see a nice turnout today. So I have a bit of background in research. I'm pushing on 4 years working at the Shafi lab at Toronto General Hospital. Right now, my research involves using artificial intelligence to help with organ transplant matching. So it's some really exciting stuff. And yeah.
Awesome. I love how diverse everyone's different research topics are. Parmin, if you could go next.
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Parmin, and I'm currently in my 4th year of kinesiology and health science. Just to give you a bit of a background in terms of my research experiences, I've been a research student at the Sensory Motor Control Lab here at York University with Dr. Henriquez. I'm currently an honors thesis student, so definitely looking forward to sharing my experience on that. And also, I'm currently working on a literature review with a professor from University of Alberta as well, which I was able to connect to about a year ago. But yeah, that's kind of my research background, and the research for that is about mainly teleoncology and how it could be implemented in different ways. But yeah, thank you for having me today, and looking forward to the event.
Awesome. On that note of connection, I'm sure a lot of the people attending would want to know, how they can connect to professors, and so we'll cover that shortly. So just talking about a couple of research placements at York. So you have the NCERC and DURA. The NCERC is primarily for Canadian students. And so it's based on your GPA, and you can find a PI or a professor basically to work with, and you write up a proposal and it gets reviewed and accepted. If you're an international student, you have the option of the DURA, which is kind of approved by the dean. And this is also paid. It's a paid placement. And then you have RAY, which is research at York. This is also paid. And then you have research practicum, which is a 0 credit course. And you can kind of work with a professor of yours and get some experience. It's a great way to get into the research field. And then you have field courses, which are, I think it depends. It can be like 3 or 4 credit courses. Before I do get to there, I want to ask if any of the panelists have any experience with any of these, NCERC, DURA, RAY, research practicum, if you guys want to add anything. No? Yeah, I think we can move on to the next ones. So I just wanted to add this. There's other research placements for undergraduate students other than York. So there's the CERP at U of T. It's a summer undergraduate research program where you work, I think it's 3 months, and the deadline to apply and find a PI to work with and submit your proposal is by February 15th. Then you have the Sick Kids Summer Research Program. This is at Sick Kids Hospital. And then you have the Keenan Research Summer Student Program. This is at St. Mike's Hospital. And then you have the SRI Summer Student Research Program. And so all these have different deadlines. We could send you the links and you guys can check them out for your information. Okay, so I kind of just wanted to get started into contacting and finding professors. And so what I've personally found is you should start off with introducing yourself and explaining why you're interested in the professor's research. It's all about kind of showing and reading up on their publications that you have that interest and what exactly like drew you towards their specific lab. You can kind of make the second paragraph about your own experiences, kind of talk to them and why they relate to the research and why you'd be a good candidate, and just really showing your good characteristics. And then you can highlight some important experiences and just state your passion, why you'd like to work with them. And then you can end the email off by thanking them for their time and letting them know you look forward to hearing from them. Usually you have to attach your resume and cover letter, that's standard, but some programs would need your transcript as well at first. So it's always good to have those in handy. I kind of wanted to ask if any of the panelists have any advice on contacting and finding professors, some tips. If there's something on the slide that I haven't covered that they'd like to add, that would be great.
I can definitely add a point or two, and then I'm looking forward to hearing from other folks as well. But I guess one point that I just wanted to really highlight in terms of finding professors and reaching out to people, especially right now with circumstances being constantly changing with COVID. I guess one thing that I just wanted to highlight was to also make sure that you're being patient and, kind of, I guess, you're kind of having that perseverance in the whole process, because it can, at times be daunting. At times you have to reach out to a lot of different people until you're finally able to land a position at the laboratory, hopefully with the research that you are interested in. So, if you do reach out to professors or and you don't hear a response, or, they tell you no, I just wanted to really highlight that, especially right now with COVID, this is, I guess, the nature of many things. And, with research, that is definitely one topic that does require a lot of patience. I started reaching out to professors in the second term of my first year, and I was able to land a research position in the second term of my second year, finally. So, it's a process, and, just keep on trying, and at some point it'll definitely work out.
I think you make a great point about that, especially with COVID. I know a fourth year friend of mine who got into the CERT program that I just mentioned. And he told me he was sending, I think, 4 emails a day, which was in total like 60. And for one research placement, you might have like 200 applications. And so just stay perseverant and keep trying. And I think that's a great point you made. Do any of the other panelists have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, let me jump in and echo what Parmin was saying. So for my experience, I pretty much had to do the same. I had to do a lot of reaching out. And honestly, what you were talking about, 4 applications a day, 4 emails a day, that's very much true. It was almost part of my routine, routine, wake up. Being resilient is very important, but also don't forget to follow up when you apply to someone, so a lot of times the researchers you're applying for, they have like 3 or 4 emails and they're getting dozens of emails every day. So don't hesitate at all to follow up like a week and a half, 2 weeks later, just saying like, oh, friendly reminder, I wanted to see if you had a chance to read my last email. If you have any questions, do this. One excuse that I use when I reach out is I reach out before the end of first term. And then, that's one good time to reach out, send a bunch of applications, and then mention, I don't have my full first term marks yet, but here's my previous year's transcript if you have one, or high school transcript if you have one. And then when next term comes, one excuse to follow up again is say, I got my grades back from last term. I just wanted to update you and see if you had a chance to review my applications and things like that. Also, one more thing that helps is if you have some kind of template that you go off of, to reuse and recycle. But also on that note, you really want to be genuine and authentic about your interest in their lab. And, supervisors can usually tell when you are interested or when you aren't interested. So yeah, be careful about using templates, but they are useful and they do help with your efficiency.
Yeah, I think the point about templates is important, because if you are sending, let's say, 4 emails a day, you don't want to, be spending half an hour every day just writing it up again. So maybe if it's, a lot of them do have, like, let's say, molecular techniques, and so you can have that kind of template ready. Just talking about that. So I think that's a good point. Would anyone else like to add anything, or should I go to the next slide? Okay, I think we're good. Letters of interest, and I think that was Olivia.
Yeah. So for letters of interest, the goal is to encourage the reader to want to get to know you more and have you on their team. So it's important to properly articulate why you're interested in that particular lab. So it's not enough to simply give a general overview of the lab. So you really want to try your best to do your research. And you can even start by identifying a specific question that you're interested in answering and expanding on that in your letter. So some questions you can think about while you're writing your letters is, do I have any prior experiences that can help me excel? Are there any particularly useful skills that I have? And you can also mention your GPA and make sure that they know that you can handle the workload, because sometimes they can be intense. Also, a summary of your experiences is good to have, and you can give specific examples of that. And I don't know if any of you know this, but the Career Center at York actually provides workshops for students to learn how to write letters of interest. So you can definitely check those out. But ultimately, you want to show enthusiasm and, like Amireza said, a genuine interest in the research topic. So if any panelists want to add any tips and tricks for how to write a good letter of interest, maybe just like the basics.
Yeah, I think before write the letter of interest, if you find a specific professor you want to work in his or her lab, it's better to read a few publications from their lab or from that professor, and just match your interest, match your letter with that lab's research. So that's easier to attract the professors like attention, and it's better to just read a few papers, and if you can come up a specific questions for the professor, it's also good. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great point. Did anyone else want to give some tips and tricks?
I can give a quick tip. So one thing I do in my letters of interest or cover letters sometimes is I'll add a little bit about, I'm interested in translating lab findings into, impactful strategies. Or let's say, for example, you're eyeing a lab that's doing research on childhood diabetes. You could say, I'm really interested in translating lab findings into clinically relevant, therapeutic strategy or community initiatives or public health initiatives. And, one thing I would say is if you have some kind of idea, like by participating in your lab, I would gain, foundational knowledge that will help me with developing an initiative for like a exercise initiative for children, to combat diabetes, so if you have some ideas, you can emphasize those more than research experience if you don't have any. Obviously, if you have research experience, emphasize that the most. And then another thing is supervisors are really looking for people who can be productive with a lot of independence. That's really big. They're looking for someone they can train and then be confident that they can get the work done on their own. So if you want to say those buzzwords of like, through this experience or through this course I took, I learned to independently study XYZ, that's another great thing to have in your letter.
Definitely.
Just to like chime in on Amir's thing, I think he made a really good point. You have to understand that these supervisors are really receiving a bunch of emails a day. And so if you can come up with an initiative or something creative just to make you stand out at the end of the day, that can be really helpful because like I said, it's like a needle in a haystack. There's a lot. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Any other additions or shall we move on?
Just a quick thing. I think that was really important thing what Jinxing said, because the prof shouldn't feel that you just sending an email to a lot of prof, including him or her. It should be exclusive, so they should feel that you are asking them, you are interested in their lab. And why you are interested in their lab exclusively. So that's really important. The prof should feel that.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree.
Just to quickly add one point to a question that was mentioned in the chat. This is a pretty common question where you may think that you're not as qualified or you're not as competitive if you're not a science major per se. However, I should say I don't necessarily agree with that statement, just in the sense that if you do have a background in, let's say, psychology, you could have knowledge in terms of interpretation or just looking at different components of the laboratory from a very different view that people from other science majors may have. So I just wanted to highlight that your major doesn't really determine whether you are eligible. Well, sometimes it does, depending on people that are recruiting students for a position, but at the same time don't let that major hold you back from applying for a research laboratory that you're genuinely interested in. If there's a way that you can perhaps see what that laboratory is about, perhaps, as a part of the URPP credits that you get for your introductory psychology courses, or, there's just some way that you can find, how that laboratory operates. Definitely, give it a shot. I think, it's definitely always worth to try rather than not to try. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a heads up for the participants, keep the questions coming. These are great questions, but we will have a Q&A session at the end, so you can definitely get all of those questions answered at the end as well. So we can move on to the next slide, which is academic requirements. So generally a minimum CGPA of a B+ or 7.0 on a 9-point scale is a common requirement. However, each position has their own specific requirements. So you want to make sure that you know ahead of time before you apply. So it may help if you've taken courses that are related to the topic of interest. And there are even some professors who require an unofficial transcript to be sent with your application. And some professors even ask that you take courses that they've taught prior to applying for a research position in their lab. So each lab is different, and there isn't a set of cookie cutter academic requirements. So it's important for you to do your research and ensure that you meet all the expectations before applying. So for the panelists, did you encounter any difficulties with your academic requirements? Or do you have any tips on how to achieve?
So I think each school, like in each lab in different schools, they have like a slightly different requirement for the GPA. Some school, they like ask for say GPA for full 4 years, like B+, but like some school like York, they only look at, if you apply for grad school, they only look at the last 2 years, like third year and fourth year accumulative GPA. So it depends on different school, and it also depends on the individual professor. Some professor may think the GPA is extremely important, so some professor has flexibility with the GPA, so don't let the GPA scare you off, just try it.
Thank you. That's great advice. Any other thoughts?
I think Parmin was about to.
Yeah, thanks, Amir. Yeah, the only thing I was going to add about GPA was that it is also really dependent on the type of research that you want to get involved in. For example, if you're looking for, let's say, an NSERC position, NSERC positions in general tend to be relatively competitive. So, the GPA component might be something that you want to keep in mind for, a position like that. But at the same time, I feel like, even if you look at, like professional school admissions at times, I believe that we are really leaning towards, a more holistic approach in terms of, looking at people that apply for positions beyond, their GPA or beyond their statistics. So, definitely always give it a try. And, even if you don't have the highest GPA, if you have an overall improving trend, perhaps in your GPA, that is definitely one point to highlight. And also taking specific courses can help you become more competitive. So for example, if you do have, a statistics-based background or any sort of research methods-based background, those tend to be courses that professors value at times when they are looking into recruiting a research assistant, whether it's volunteer or paid. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that as well, and I'll pass it on to Amir.
Yeah, well, you took the words right out of my mouth, so that's great. No, I'm just kidding. So definitely don't be discouraged when it comes to GPA. A lot of times passion does really go a long way, but I also will say that passion more easily comes out during an interview than it does, on a letter or on like a, email. But don't be discouraged by it. Just know that, like Parmin mentioned, something like NSERC tends to be very competitive, and they need a way to, filter through the applicants, and GPA is definitely one way that they do that. Other times, formal research positions, so some of the opportunities that you guys posted before, like the Sick Kids Summer Program and things like that, they'll also use GPA competitively. But, in my own experience, my first year, my grades were not that good. And I just sent a bunch of emails to some people working at the hospitals and universities, just unofficially, and said, I'm willing to volunteer. And if you're willing to volunteer, then the requirements become a bit more relaxed and your odds go higher. And that'll go a long way for you as well, because once you volunteer and once you have that experience, then you become very competitive for those paid positions. And also, hopefully in that time, you will have also improved your GPA. So it's definitely good if you're finding out that you want to get involved in research early, and there's always a way in. And again, it's always going to be a journey when it comes to something like research. And then the last point I will say is, if you're, Parmin mentioned statistics, and this is something that's very in demand in research. And you can learn how to use tools like RStudio, SPSS. These are statistical softwares. You can learn them on your own. There's a lot of free resources online that you could just Google. York U, their like library services or something, offers workshops on these tools. And if you can learn to use them confidently enough to say, hey, I have experience in these tools, then that'll instantly make you like a contender for any research position, because supervisors are always looking for someone who can do a bit of statistics in the lab.
Thank you. Thank you all for your input on that one. Okay. If there's nothing else, we can move on to the next one, which is what will make you stand out. I feel like this is the moment that you've all been waiting for. So when you're writing your applications and you're thinking of what will make me stand out, you can ask yourself, what's unique about me? So if you have any technical skills, it's important to mention that in your application. And sometimes letters of recommendation are required, and it's good to have a strong letter that highlights how you will meet all the criteria for the position. So when you're sending letters of recommendation or like asking a professor for that, you want to make sure that you kind of give them an idea of what to write about. So you can be like, could you highlight my organizational skills or my leadership skills, things like that. So they're not just thrown into the deep end with no idea what to write. And you also want to choose a professor who knows you, not a professor that you went to like one class with. And in some cases, even calling instead of emailing can help you stand out if calling is an option. And if you choose to do that, you should make sure that you have a list of questions and have some rehearsed responses, because it could potentially turn into a mini interview. So having knowledge of not only the position, but the faculty and the staff also lets them know that you're serious. And this kind of information is good to have in your back pocket, but you don't want to be spewing facts about the entire staff just to try to look good. You want to actually be genuine about your approach. So you want to make sure that you focus on what you can do for them and not so much what they can do for you. So do the panelists have any ideas, maybe examples of what you did to make you stand out, something unique about you? I'm sure you're all unique.
I can talk about my personal experience in terms of, that involvement. So the way that I actually got to know the professor that I'm currently doing a research with was through a volunteer position that I had here at York for, the course that I had with her, where I was, so the name of the position was course representative. And basically as a course representative, I delivered, weekly presentations at the beginning of the classes. So, the professor kind of had an opportunity to, I guess, recognize me, as one of the students in the class. And then, sort of at the end of the term was when I reached out to her and, I expressed my interest in her research. I actually was a research participant beforehand. So, I was actually one of the subjects in the research laboratory, and I really found, the different aspects of it interesting. So, I kind of reached out to her, explained my interest, and yeah, that was sort of, the way that I was able to land the position. And also, as I think Amir mentioned earlier on, it's important to reach out early, especially because, as the terms progress, more and more people with that interest might be reaching out to different professors and faculty members. So it is really important, to, as a way of standing out, perhaps to, try reaching out as early as possible, and really showcase yourself as a person. And also the class representative position, it depends on what program you're at. So depending on, what college you're at based on your current degree, that could be looking different. I can share the Faculty of Health course representative program website with you though. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Okay, I'll add on to some of the stuff Parmin said. Um, there's so many creative ways that you can stand out when it comes to finding research positions. And I didn't know about this until, I mean, it was too late for me to make use of them. But an example I'll give is, you know, if you sit in the front of the class, if you ask questions, if you go to office hours, and the professor recognizes you, you know, down the line, you can ask them, hey, I looked at some of the work you do, or, you know, I'm really interested in some of the work you do. How do I get involved with tackling some of the questions that are being asked in the field right now? And then, you know, that conversation, you can kind of guide it to, do you take research students? Is there any one of your colleagues that you know that are willing to take on a research volunteer? And then if they're really open to it, and you're very keen to get into research, you can also say, like, if they suggest a colleague, you can say, hey, do you mind connecting us? You know, maybe they'll send an email to connect you. This isn't too likely, but it's also an option. Another thing is, I really like that you guys put down calling instead of emailing. And I remember I made use of this. And I genuinely think one time I got an interview just because I called, and I spoke to the supervisor a few times just to get, you know, learn some more about the research. I said, hey, I'm learning about your research, or I did an assignment. Say this if you really did do an assignment and you found the research, but like, I did an assignment, you know, I want to learn about your research. And then that conversation can eventually, you know, maybe turn into a research opportunity for you. Lastly, don't forget to put any skills you think that might be useful. So one thing that I put in is, I know how to do 3D modeling. And sometimes for, you know, scientific visual representation, especially when it comes to writing papers, that's very useful. I remember after I got a lab position, I was kind of drawing to study. And when my supervisor saw me drawing, they asked me to come and do a bit of visual work for one of the papers they were working on. And that was an opportunity that just came from putting your skills to use in unique ways. So don't be afraid to, if you have something interesting to share, share it. And that can also make you stand out and be useful for you, even after you get the position.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your experiences. Jinghan or Zeynab, do you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, I think they talk it all. So just one little point, when you have the opportunity to express your interest to any of the professor or the lab, if it's possible, may talk with a few of their lab members and to ask what they are doing, and then be specific. Do not just express the general interest to the research. Just, like you need to do some research your own, like what they're really doing, and think about why are you interested in this field. Yeah, be specific.
For sure.
If you don't mind, let me add one more thing, just because I forgot to mention this.
No, go ahead.
Don't be afraid to talk to your TAs. TAs are a great resource. And, you know, they have their peers who are also, you know, at the graduate level. So they can do a bit of networking for you as well. So that's one way to get in touch. And if you make a good impression on a TA, then you can let them know that you're interested in working with the, you know, course coordinator who they work under, and they can put in a good word for you. And that can go a really long way.
Thank you. So next we're going to move into a time of questions. So we have a couple that you guys sent in through the Google Forms. So we're going to do those ones first. And then also if you have any questions, you can either unmute or type it in the chat. But for now, we're going to work on the ones that people have sent in. So the first question, can I earn money while I do research? So panelists, this is for you. Anyone can speak first.
Well, it depends on the school, depends on the lab, and depends on school, what like funding package the school will give it to you when you being admitted to the program. So sometimes like at York, most of the people working in biology lab has a TA position. So that is a paid position. So you can earn some money, and the funding package also can cover your tuition as well. For some people, they might not get the TA position, but there's also other like research assistant, the RA position as well. So you can also get paid. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Jinghan covered it perfectly. I think, there are definitely many opportunities to earn money as, your work for your work in research, whether it's as, perhaps a paid research assistant here at York through the RAY program. So Research at York is usually what it's called. Or, as an NSERC student, that's another position where you do get paid for your research work. There are definitely opportunities at other institutions, laboratories at hospitals, all of that. But at the same time, similar to how it was covered earlier on, getting paid at times, like it probably, like at times it would be better to try aiming for volunteer positions rather than paid in an immediate basis, especially if it's, your very first exposure to research, only because, if you're starting your work as a volunteer, not only you have a better chance usually of, getting a position, but also it's just, a first step to, I guess, get your feet wet and get a sense of, whether this is actually a research that you want to, further get involved with as a paid student. So yeah, there are definitely opportunities, but at the same time, sometimes it may be better to try getting involved as a volunteer and then perhaps consider paid options.
Definitely. I think that about covers it. So we can move on to the next question. My GPA is low right now and I do not have experience. How will this affect the opportunities I can apply to? I know we touched a little bit on this, but does anyone want to go into more depth with that?
I think we covered it quite well.
I think so. Okay, so we can move on to the next one. How does an honors thesis work? This is a good question.
I'm in an honors thesis course right now, so I can, I guess, kind of jump in. So I would just first give a disclaimer that the structure of an honors thesis course can really vary depending on who the professor or the faculty member that you're doing your course with is. So I would just, kind of share my personal experience, but at the same time, keep in mind that it could really look different depending on who the professor that you're doing the research with is. So as part of my honors thesis program, essentially what I'm doing right now is mainly analysis of many of the data that has been collected from last summer, so summer 2021 until this term. And basically, I'm kind of looking for whether there are any outliers, what trends are there. And basically, I'm kind of compiling all of that into the final report that I will be submitting as part of my honors thesis course this April. So I guess in terms of the course breakdown again is really fluid and variant depending on who the professor that you're working with is, because honors thesis is sort of a course that it doesn't really have a structured course outline. The course outline is something that you and your professor come up with depending on when the deadlines have to be in terms of submitting different things. However, at the same time, like many professors try giving you some sort of feedback before the drop deadlines, just because that is kind of a regulation where the professors have to give you a certain percentage of course feedback, so that you can make a decision about if you want to keep it or not. But at the same time, that's kind of the way it works. I do have a friend who is also taking an honors thesis right now, and she spends a lot of hours in the laboratory. She practically, honestly, at this point, I think she works at the level of a master's student or sort of a senior member of the laboratory. So it can really look differently for different people. But that is kind of like the way that it usually works. A final report is usually a fixed aspect of honors thesis courses, though.
Thank you. Also in the chat, there's a question relating to this. Can honors students write thesis or should be specialized in our major to be eligible?
From my knowledge, I think that really depends on the program that you're in. So, for example, I'm in the kinesiology program, and for that program specifically, you can be a specialized student or just an honor student, and regardless, you would still be eligible to take an honors thesis course. However, if you're from a different faculty, if you're from the Faculty of Science or just a different course in the Faculty of a different degree in the Faculty of Health, I think it would probably be best to check that requirement before seeing whether you would be able to take a course. So yeah, it would be really dependent on your program.
Awesome. Does anyone want to add to that before we open up the floor for any questions? Okay, so for all the participants, you can either unmute yourselves, raise your hand, or send a question in the chat. The floor is yours to ask whatever you want. Okay, so we have Akshita. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Miss. Firstly, I would like to thank you first for this information. I was really looking for something like that. I just want, my question was, you have covered this. My first year GPA is not good, and I don't have any work. You have covered this, and I have contacted many professors. I did have sent emails regularly as well, but I haven't received anything yet. And I've also applied for WCA's student research program. The thing is received, but how should follow up? I have sent multiple emails. I just get automated emails back. So I want how else can I contact them? What should I do to know that?
Great question. Alice can go ahead and jump in.
I can answer this. Yeah, so a lot of times, and I've heard this from professors themselves, they say persistence is key. So obviously you don't want to pester with an email every week. I would wait 2-3 weeks if you've sent more than 2-3 emails already. If you're not hearing back from professors, it might be a better use of your time to apply in other places. If you're not hearing back from people at York even, you might want to apply at other institutions outside of the university. If your grades are a concern of yours and you do have the means, then you might even want to spend some time working on the grades first, and then when the grades are up, trying again. But when it comes to research, there isn't really a magic bullet when it comes to securing a position and even being successful in the position. So really it comes down to that persistence, patience, and resilience.
Okay.
I think another point is maybe try to talk to your profs first and, the classes that you're taking, because it's an easier way to kind of get your foot in the door rather than cold emailing. That's kind of what I did first year was I just went up after one of my courses, and especially since things are going back in person, it's a good opportunity to, be able to do that. But yeah, it usually does help being able to talk to someone rather than just emailing. So maybe try that.
Thank you.
Actually, let me add 2 really quick points before we move on. One is, if you look up the researcher's name, sometimes on the directory, they have a administrative assistance contact information there. So you can reach out there. And then another option is, if they don't have an admin that you can reach out to, is see what department they're working in and reach out to someone another administrative assistant, but from the department, and let them know, because I've had in the past someone say, oh, they were actually away for a sabbatical, so there's no way you would have heard back from them. And I was like, okay, that's why I'm not hearing back. So yeah, you try to be resourceful and navigate the online resources that institutions have up with all the contacts.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat. if you are applying to master's, do you need to have an undergraduate thesis? Zeynab, I know you mentioned that you were in a master's program. Would you want to take the reins on that one?
Yeah, there's no need to have a thesis in your undergrad if you're applying for master's, but if you have, it will, if you already had, it will help because you have so many experiences on writing a thesis and maybe working on another lab. But if you don't, I mean, in New York, I know that it's not necessary. You just need to have a bachelor's degree, not a thesis.
Awesome. If there are any other questions, you guys can raise your hands or ask in the chat. The next one from Aria, is it recommended to do a practicum before an honors thesis? Oh, and it was answered in the chat. Someone says that they think it's required. That's awesome. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds. If no one has any more questions, then I'll give the floor to Inez. Okay, I think we're good. So thank you all for coming. Inez, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, so thank you guys. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you everyone else for coming out. We hope you enjoyed this little crash course on how to get into research at the undergraduate level. For any questions, feel free to email us or contact us on social media, and someone will get back to you as soon as we can. As I previously stated, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel for this recording. It'll be up in a couple of days, I believe. But thank you once again to our panelists and everyone else for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.